Welcome to the King County Recovery Conversations. My name is Carolyn Presnell, and I am here today with Deaunte Damper. Just as a quick intro, Deaunte is a longtime community activist and advocate who has focused much of his career on HIV awareness in the Black community. Damper previously served as the NAACP's first LGBTQ plus chair, and then also hosts a bi-weekly show, We Live in Color with Deaunte Damper. Deaunte, you're just like about the business. You're like in all of this stuff.
I try to be.
Yeah, listen, it's premiered across all Converge media platforms, and Converge, correct me if I'm wrong, is the leading producer in culturally relevant content in Seattle and across the Pacific Northwest, tailored specifically for Black communities.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to talk about. You also worked as a transitional specialist for DOC and is now currently a community organizer for Vocal Washington and a part of the leadership team for Build 206. And I mean, there's so many things that you're doing that it's crazy, and you're connected to co-lead. And so I want to hear about all of this stuff. So Deaunte, tell me how you first got connected to this recovery community.
Oh, wow. Being a part of the recovery community, I was born in the community. I wouldn't want to say recovery community, right?
Right.
I've been born, like, living in Seattle. I've had many family members that were a part of the war on drugs through incarceration, or actually no access at all.
Right.
You know, and for myself, I never looked at myself as an addict because I was like what we would call in the recovery community a weekend warrior, right?
Oh, right.
So gradually, drinking on the weekends with friends as a kid, and then in my 20s, ecstasy, and gradually ended up getting introduced to methamphetamine.
Right.
And
Caught a pesky little meth habit.
Right. Caught one. And you know, the thing about it is too, it's like it's still a conversation that we don't talk about, especially in the LGBTQ community.
That's right.
That we kind of shy away from. But
In what way?
I want to say in the way of, speaking as a Black person, Black people don't think Black people do meth. And also, you know, there is an isolation piece that queer folks go through. And I think, you know, it is also used as a sexual drug.
Sure.
And it makes, we need to start having more conversations to it because it opens up the door for opportunistic infections, HIV, et cetera, which ended up becoming a part of my story, diagnosed at 2013, not through injection use, but through relationship that I was in.
Yeah, I hear you.
Mm-hmm.
I hear you. So tell me a little bit about your recovery journey. What does that look like?
Ooh, recovery journey has been 3 years in, and keep in mind, I would do this thing where I'd be cool, but that pandemic happened. That pandemic happened in the midst of me chairing Black Lives Matter Seattle King County. I was doing great work. But thought that if I went to go take care of myself that I would lose everything.
Yeah.
Fear, right?
Yep.
That fear that we have that nothing will be here, when everything will collapse once I expose myself and tell my truth.
Yeah.
I can talk about the things such as my lived experience through HIV and overcoming the incarceral system and all those things. But what does it look like for me to show up for myself? And I have to thank the director of Vocal, Malika Lamont, because she is the one who came to me and said, everything will be back here for you in tenfolds. And even if it's not, just showing up for yourself.
There's something about when we're moving through this journey in recovery, it's that I'm happy to tell you about the trials after I've solved the problem.
Right. Girl, that's my Taurus nature anyway. But you know, but it was hard. It was really, really hard going into treatment to admit that I was powerless over my ability of using any mind altering substances. But above all else, it was even harder getting out. being very self-conscious. You are in treatment for those X amount of days, and then you're kind of going through outpatient, and then your system's changing. But you can do those things, which are effective. Those things are effective for some folks. But my recovery journey was me embracing my community and allowing my community to embrace me.
Listen, that's beautiful. So tell me, in your day-to-day life, what is, you're involved in so many things in the community, and thank you for that. We need you in the world, advocating on behalf of our people who are impacted by the myriad of things that all the things. Tell me, I want to hear a little bit more about your journey with accessing the platform of the NAACP first
LGBTQ chair
in 110 years.
And,
please talk about that.
Oh, wow. When I first started doing work and activism work, I had a friend, and my friend was going through a case, and I went to the NAACP for help. And in the meeting, they went through their call to action for the year. And they didn't say anything about LGBTQ folks. And, if you know me outside of podcasts, you know that I am a person that speaks very passionately. And I was in tears when I left there because I said, you brush over our existence and you think that we exist just in Capitol Hill. But it is existence of a queer community, but there's not very much representation of us. And I cried, and I'll never forget Claude Perfect. He stood up and said, well, hell, you're doing all this talking. We should just make you an LGBTQ chair or come up with something. And I thought he was just like joking.
Right.
But it turned into I didn't realize that there never was one. There's been committees like in Philadelphia and in DC and nationally they had a committee, but never like a chair. And it was so important because we are so many times like we are. When I grew up in Seattle, it was okay to grow up in Rainier Beach and be Black, but not queer. Then I go to Capitol Hill, and then it's okay, queer, but no representation of Black. So most of us Black queer folks in organizations are trying to figure out, like, hey, how do people prioritize our existence? And throughout the years, like working with Senator Wilson with making sure that we were bringing queer education into the schools and also prioritizing Black history implemented into that space. Contracting with Seattle Public School, NAACP contracting with Seattle Public Schools to talk about HIV affirming lessons. Rainier Beach High School, Garfield High School. It was a lot of great accomplishments. NAACP walking through their first Pride here in the state of Washington under that space, and it's so great. And I'm now under the LGBTQ for the state area conference. So that's Alaska, Oregon, and Washington. So right now I am advocating, protecting, and building the whole northern area for advocacy in our space.
Listen, way to represent.
Yeah.
So let's go back a little ways. Are you from Seattle, Washington?
I'm from the south end of Seattle.
Okay. Listen. There ain't many of us left.
Rainier Beach.
Yes.
Grew up here, family ties, very big in community. My grandmother was a foster home developer. My father is a tow truck driver and has been doing that for very many years. My mom been a healthcare worker for almost 40 years. I've only learned the thing that I've always been embedded in me since my family embedded in me was being of service.
I hear that in both things, is that your mother in healthcare and your father is a tow truck driver. Both of those, whether you like being towed or not.
Yeah.
But if you need a tow, you absolutely want one.
Yeah,
I promise
absolutely.
you that. But I hear that. Tell me a little bit about your upbringing.
My upbringing, I'm a twin. I'm the third of six. We grew up with my grandmother. My grandmother, my dad, and my mom. So kind of periodically going.
Fraternal twins?
Fraternal twins.
Okay.
And, and growing up, I mean, I touched on it a little bit, not really knowing where you fit, but I fit. Mm-hmm. My brother was really, 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 really tough on me. But like when I say tough on me, in other words of like making sure that I knew how to stand up for myself.
Got you.
And fought a lot in school, fought a lot in school, started a lot of stuff in school too. Sorry, Rainier Beach, but graduated from Rainier Beach in 2004. But, there was a community here. You know, when we would act up or something would happen, somebody knew my mama or my grandma or someone, right?
Yes.
And there's a lot of things that are going on in community where we are looking to a lot of these kids don't have a sense of community because they've been pulled, their family members live in Tacoma or out of town or can't even afford to live in this space. But we have to find a way to show up for our youth.
Yeah. Well, and times have changed a little bit. It's not the same level of accountability. I also, when I was growing up, I was accountable to my mother, but I was also accountable to the neighbor lady and the people at the grocery store. I was accountable to them all.
Yeah.
Act up if you want to, because somebody's going to tell.
Look.
So, so share with me a little bit about, you say that you are connected to PDA or to co-lead.
Co-lead.
To
to PDA in itself.
Vocal Washington.
Right,
Let's
Vocal
be really
Washington.
Vocal Washington. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your work with Vocal?
Man, Voices of Community Activists and Leaders Washington is a grassroots organization that wants to help low-income community members who have been impacted by HIV, substance use, mass incarceration, and homelessness find their political power and build with trying to change policy and community. So a lot of our work stems from even partnering with public health through a program called CETA, which is Council Expert Advice on Drug Use. We've been doing that for 3 years, where we're able to go into spaces like DESC buildings and our co-lead sites around to help our community members find their power. Most of our folks, and big, huge shout out to co-lead and the staff there, right? Because we do civic engagement meetings that we hold in those spaces and let them know not just about what's happening in community, like word of mouth, such as everything that's going on with soda, such as, listen, and that's a whole different thing. But these community folks who have been impacted by homelessness, who are losing their friends to overdose on a daily, we are having civic engagement meetings for them to be able to find power in their voices. They are talking about things that they want to change. They've had different folks that are even running for office now come into the site, and we've done many little candidate forums.
Listen, I want to hear more about that. I hear you talking about people finding their power and the things that they want to change. What are some of the things that you're hearing?
You know, I think that one of the main things that I'm hearing is housing. We need to be housed. Why do they keep on trying to push us out? You know, like that's the main thing. It's we need to be housed, and because most of our folks who are now housed in the co-lead sites, it's like my friends, my family, my brother is still out there, my family's still out there, and this is not to take away from any of the programs that have been working in the areas of housing, but there is more to do.
There's more to do. I'm with you. I work for an organization that works specifically with folks who are impacted by the criminal legal system.
I love well.
So, and you know well.
My Uncle Frank.
Listen, yay, yeah. And so, and it's a huge part of the work that we do, but there's not nearly enough. And I think that until we begin to, look at reentry and substance use and mental health, disability, and all of the others in the lens of public health, housing is a public health issue when you're talking about supportive, creating supportive services for that population of folks. I'm a person who is impacted by the criminal legal system. I'm impacted by chronic drug and alcohol use, mental health issues, you name it, systemic racism, poverty, all of it, and it's like, and coming out of incarceration, it is its own trauma. And it is not a system that is designed to support people in exercising agency. Is that it is more aligned with compliance as opposed to transformation.
Well, I think that now we've been kind of focused on that. I think that we were at the tipping point of figuring, we were right before that pandemic hit, we were there.
Yeah.
There was a bigger coalition of let's look into pouring into folks. What do we need to do to get to be more of a community compass to direct our community folks? But I think one of the things that has been happening right now is like there's just this laser focus on criminalization rather than recovery. And we're not talking of forced treatment, because I don't think that also is helpful. I'm talking about what does it look like to also pour into the community-led organizations such as Weld, such as DESC, such as co-lead, just to name a few.
Yeah. I am interested in learning a little bit about more about you personally.
Okay.
You have such, you're charismatic and you have, the gift of a calling of service and all of those things. What are some of the things that you're doing to take care of yourself in your own recovery?
That is good. And I will tell you, one of the things that I do, people are like, oh, well, we should go hiking and all that. I'm not a hiker. I like to lay down. I love to lay down. And one of the things that I love to do, I've always been in music. My uncle plays piano with Kenny G. So I've always just been like tough on music. So I love to just sit down and look at music documentaries. And it really is like my therapy. It's just great just to do that. I have some really great friends who are also organizers. And we have our quarterly meetings where we just have a day where we just watch movies and lay down and talk about life. I have a group of brothers that I work with Build. We're getting ready to take a trip in December.
Where are you guys going?
We ain't telling.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. We won't follow you.
We're finalizing it now. But, I think one of the things that I do to take care of myself is continue to be transparent with where I'm at. And people might be like, oh, well, that's not taking care of yourself. Yes, it is. As a person that lived in darkness for so long, that couldn't really open up, that felt like I could only open up at the last minute, I open up then. I tell my friends how I feel in the moment about some of these laws that are coming out, or about some of the things that being an organizer and being everywhere all at once, there's pressure. And I deal with that a lot. But I'm safe. Yeah. And when I do feel under pressure, because I have a community of people that love me. And then when I do need to pull back or sit back and go out to dinner or go for a walk, I went on a walk last week. My therapist would be proud. And walked about a mile with a friend. So.
Yeah. Well, and I heard, that piece about authenticity and transparency, like they also, that's been essential for me as well. And especially when you are a public figure, there is an added pressure to, I don't want to say perform, but to show up well.
Yeah.
Is that, this is a gift entrusted into our care. And I think, I love that you're doing things to take care of yourself and that you're including others in the journey. Yeah. I think it is a thing that we cannot do alone.
Yeah. None of us. None of us can do this alone.
Yeah.
And even with the policies and the things, to kind of piggyback back to that, even the folks that are in leadership now, it's like we're making these Lone Ranger decisions, but we have to do it together. And everyone has to be included in it.
Yeah. So let's move into, the realm of your podcast. Do you listen? I feel like it's a passion project. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the work
As
you're doing?
As a kid, I always wanted to be like Montel Williams. I loved him. I loved his discussions when he talked about MS. He was very transparent, and he brought people on his show every year. At least 4 or 5 different discussions about like what that looked like. And as a Black man, you don't really get to see that vulnerability. That being said, Omari Salisbury is God sent. After the pandemic, he was like, I want to do a better job. We need to do a better job about LGBTQ programming.
Tell us more about Omari. Tell us a little bit for those who don't know who Omari is.
Omari Salisbury is a guiding light for the 206. When we talk about what was happening during 2020, when we had Chopped and Taz there, no one was telling the real stories. None of the media was telling what was really happening. Converge Media, which is the media organization that I work with, they were there. And they were already there. They already been doing 8 years of work. But the groundbreaking stuff, they really were breaking the seal on getting police held accountable, and really just giving community when we're saying getting police held accountable, is having the real conversations where we can have a conversation about police accountability, where we can have a real conversation about how we exist in community and how people can show up for us. Converge was there. Even won a governor's award at the Emmys a couple of years ago. And we just, me and Omari decided we needed to start a show. And that's how We Live in Color is born. And it's so important. We Live in Color was so important because Omari has lost his brother who was queer years ago. And I just recently at that time had lost a couple of folks that are queer to HIV, to overdose, to suicide. And it was so important for us to prioritize Black LGBTQ community members in this space. To hear their stories on where they're at, how we can support their businesses, or what we can do in the areas of mental health, how we can overcome church hurt, how we can seek therapy. It is so important. Like when the sunlight hits the prism and all like the colors are like revealed.
Yes.
That's what We Live in Color is about. It is that light for queer folks. And, I lost a friend this year to suicide overdose. And that show's for him. That show is for the future Nikita Olivers. That show is for the Jalen Scotts and the Pocan folks. And it's just, we as Black folks, we exist. And it is a great opportunity for folks who aren't familiar with Black queer folks to watch.
Yeah.
For folks who may be allies, in community, but might need to do a little bit more homework.
If somebody wanted to be an ally in community, what would you suggest to them?
Walk with humility. Don't come in like you know.
Yeah. How can they get involved?
One, you can always reach out to me, but above all else, there's great organizations that are leading those efforts on advocacy on some of the topics that we had. So with Vocal, of course, you can go to pda.com/vocalwa, Lavender Rights Project, lavenderrightsproject.com, Pocan, Pocan.org, NAACP, ALC. Those are great ways. And these are some, and keep in mind, there are other great organizations that are allies too. Bill 206, Freedom Project, Black Prisoners Caucus, The Covenant. Those are just some that I know that are coming off the top of the dome. Queer Power Alliance.
Yeah. Tell me about, you've named a bunch of powerful organizations, and they are, focused specifically on working with, the ones that you named with people of color and in the reentry movement. And do you want to tell me a little bit about your reentry journey?
Oh, girl. My reentry journey started in 2008-9, and I did 4 months. I couldn't keep my hands off. I didn't steal. I was a professional borrower. I would go to stores, borrow from one store, and then politely return them to another. But I did 17 months off of 24 in Pensacola, Florida.
Okay.
And it was very. It wasn't hard. It was hard to get.
What do you mean?
Because I think that during that time, it could have been the most depressing time for me, but really I needed to sit my behind down.
Listen.
And sometimes we need those. Some of us need those moments to collect. And I was moving so fast.
Right.
Life was moving so fast, and I didn't realize at that point in time. I realized, you've been walking in grief because you lost 2 important people, and you've been walking in grief ever since, and you haven't even sat down and thought about what it would look like to take it in. Like you are, like when you get out, what will be your plan?
Yeah.
I never thought I had an end goal. I just thought I would just keep on just doing what I'm doing, being in and out. But that time I had to sit my ass down.
Yeah.
Excuse me. But that time I had to sit my ass down, I knew what I had to do.
Yeah.
And the change gradually happened. I didn't get to success right out. It gradually got there.
Right. And that stuff, I'm assuming that professional borrowing is connected to the meth.
Oh yeah. Oh no. Actually, it wasn't.
Okay.
It wasn't.
Tell me
more
about that.
I had a job. And this was, I met someone in community, and they introduced me to Tina, and I did not know Tina was meth. I just thought it was just something new. Mm-hmm. And I did it, and I was living in D.C., and it was a lot because, most folks don't think people can be sexually assaulted. but I was sexually assaulted, which had me move from DC back to Florida, which is the first time actually I did it was right before I went to prison. And I didn't realize that was methamphetamine, but when I was sexually assaulted, I ended up going back to Florida, and then that's when I ended up getting picked up and getting sent to prison.
Gotcha.
But it gradually, once I was diagnosed, there was some trauma that came from that. So then that's how I started to get back into it.
Well, I don't want to get too in your business.
No,
and
girl,
share. You can tell
my
me.
business.
You can tell me to decline.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
But like, if drugs is not the motivator, like, and so often we think about like drugs is why people do crime, and a lot of times that's connected to it, the criminal engagement stuff. But what was some of the motivating stuff that was going on with, kind of criminal activity?
Oh, the motivation? Oh, I can tell you. I was broke. And when I was living down in Florida, the minimum wage was $6.50 an hour. And you mean to tell me I can just go into this place and just do this for 2 hours and make a week's paycheck in 3 days, and then I could just sit down? I can pay my rent.
Motivated by poverty.
Absolutely.
Motivated by poverty.
I said I was broke now,
Yeah.
but it was, and I'm grateful for that experience. Though seriously, like it sucks, but it also taught me how to hustle.
Yeah. So what were some of the things that you learned? And this is by no means to state that prison is a transformational experience in the sense that it's something we should do. But I also was a person that I needed the cycle of my life to be interrupted, and because there were not other resources in the community that can do it, prison acts as an intervention for those without resource, and so it did do that, did that job. But what were some of the kind of takeaways that you got from the time that you spent? Because I heard you say that it had some value.
Yeah, I think the value of it was really looking at myself. And I mean, when I say looking at myself, I mean the grief that I carry. And I mean, trust me, even after prison, it took me about 10 years to really tap in with what I carry and the trauma and how fast I was moving. It taught me to find some time to slow down.
Yeah.
Find some time to slow down. And above all else, how much your mother's love can keep you protected, how much your grandmother's prayers can keep you. Because those are I didn't get very many calls from friends, they couldn't call jail, but the two people that I talked to the most was my mama and my grandmother. It was through their prayers and through them talking to me that helped me through that space.
Is your grandmother and your mother still living?
And grandma's tomorrow, my grandma will be 88 years old.
Happy
and
birthday.
I'll be right with her tomorrow.
Happy birthday, Grandma. Well, are there some other things that you feel are important to share today that you just wish that people knew?
I think what I want people to know is that, there are, right now, community members need to really get into policy. The policies that are getting ready to impact folks that are been through that have been through the reentry system, folks that identify as LGBTQIA, Black and brown folks in our community. Our most marginalized communities are getting ready to be impacted. Session was so short, so it is important for you to be reaching out to any state representative, any senator, to let them ask them how they're prioritizing your community.
Yeah.
Ain't no tap dance in this session.
No, and this isn't something that we're going to do alone. Each one of us has a part to play in the community, and often I think that people are a little intimidated or they're not quite sure what to do. Sometimes it's not wanting to move outside of our own comfort zone. If I'm not directly impacted, then maybe it's not important. And we know that substance use, incarceration, it impacts everyone. Gentrification, all of it. And so what are some ways that you know that we can organize collectively as a community to, move the needle on some of this stuff?
Well, I would say, Vocal, we meet every first and third third Monday of every month. Come with us to come get organized in that space. We definitely want to have more folks be involved. And we're not just talking about in King County. We are not doing that. We're talking about Thurston. We're talking about Whatcom County. We're talking about Vancouver. Anybody out there in the state. We meet through Zoom, and we want to be able to help folks mobilize, teach folks how to get out there and hit up Olympia. When it's time to come out there, Olympia, you don't have to do it alone. We don't care if it's a small, if it's around housing in Whatcom County. We don't care if it is more healthcare initiatives for trans folks in our community. We want to be there to help. So come mobilize with us, and we will mobilize with you.
I know that's right.
Okay.
Well, listen, Deaunte, I really appreciate you taking the time to connect with us. I just want to say thank you very much to the King County Behavioral Health and Recovery Division for allowing us the opportunity to be able to do this together. And of course, the team at Orbit Studios for making this podcast possible. Thank you so much for joining us today.
And did y'all notice we were matching? We didn't do this on purpose.
We did not do this on purpose.
We didn't.
Those who are just listening, we are twinning today.
Yeah, we're twinning.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Deaunte.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, take care.
Thank you.